You know that very specific sinking feeling in your stomach?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Right, like you're sitting at your desk, the lighting is just a little too harsh, and you're staring at this massive, incredibly dense textbook.
The HSPA 9th edition technical manual in this case.
Exactly. Hundreds of pages of text, intricate diagrams of surgical tools, all that complex microbiology terminology. You just look at this behemoth and think, there is absolutely no way I am memorizing all of this.
Yeah, it's impossible, or at least it feels impossible. It's like the ultimate feeling of academic dread, you know?
Totally.
The sheer volume of information doesn't just feel challenging. It honestly feels genuinely hostile. You're training for a high-stakes medical role, and suddenly you just hit this giant wall of data.
But the reality of that manual is often wildly misunderstood, isn't it?
Oh, completely. Because certification boards, they don't just hand you a phone book-sized textbook and expect you to memorize it cover to cover.
Like some kind of trivia champion.
Right, exactly. They actually provide a highly specific blueprint.
And that blueprint is exactly what we're unpacking in today's deep dive. We're looking through this brilliant strategic breakdown from a YouTube channel called The Sterile Guy.
Yeah, his breakdown is fantastic.
It really is. He zeroes in on the HSPA CRCST content outline. So that's the Certified Registered Central Service Technician exam. And the way he frames this outline, I mean, it completely dismantles that feeling of overwhelm.
Because treating exam prep like a guessing game is the biggest mistake candidates make. You know, flipping through chapters randomly or trying to brute force your way through flashcards.
Right, but it's an understandable mistake, though. When you're faced with a mountain of information, your instinct is just to start climbing.
Oh, for sure. But the HSPA literally publishes the exact roadmap for the exam. If you understand how to decode their content outline, your studying just stops being this stressful, randomized cram session.
It becomes more of a highly targeted surgical operation.
Exactly.
So let's figure out how to actually decode it then. I want to move past the generic idea of a roadmap. When you literally download this outline and look at it, what are you physically looking at?
Well, at its core, the outline defines 3 critical parameters. First, it dictates the specific topics that will be tested. Second, it tells you exactly how heavily each topic is weighted on the exam.
Meaning how many questions will be devoted to it.
Right. And third, it provides the structural logic for where those questions originate. But the true insight from the source material, the concept that completely reframes the whole thing, is understanding that this outline is the direct result of a job task analysis.
Okay, wait, a job task analysis, that sounds like corporate jargon.
Yeah, it does sound a bit dry.
Like, how does that help someone who's just trying to decipher complex chapters on steam sterilization?
I get that, but it actually changes everything about how you should approach the material. A job task analysis is this rigorous, systematic study of what professionals in a specific field actually do during their shifts.
Oh, so they literally go into hospitals.
Yeah, the exam creators go in, they observe sterile processing technicians, track their workflows, and analyze the risks associated with every single step of their day. They measure which tasks are the most frequent and which ones carry the highest risk to patient safety.
Wow. Okay, so the test isn't designed by, academics sitting in a room thinking up the hardest possible questions about surgical steel history.
No, not at all. It's a mirror of the actual hospital floor. It's strictly built to ensure you can safely and effectively perform the daily operations required to keep an operating room running today.
That is a massive relief. It really shifts the burden from, I need to know everything to I just need to know how to do the job.
Exactly. It's functional reality. If a specific task is a huge part of a tech's daily workload, or if a failure in that task results in a severe patient infection, that task is going to completely dominate the exam.
And if we trace that actual job, like the daily life cycle of a surgical instrument, we really start to see how the exam outline takes shape.
Yeah, the outline divides the exam into 7 major sections.
Right, but as the source material points out, the distribution of questions across those sections is nowhere near equal. There's this massive concentration of points in what we probably should call the big 3.
The heavy hitters of the exam. They perfectly track the physical journey of a bloody, used surgical instrument from the very moment it leaves the operating room.
Sections 2, 3, and 4, basically. Let's walk through that journey. So section 2 is cleaning, decontamination, and disinfection. And that single section accounts for 21% of the entire exam.
Which makes perfect clinical sense, right?
Yeah.
Decontamination is the messy, high-stakes beginning of the process. In the real world, if you fail to properly clean the bioburden off an instrument, the rest of the process is totally compromised.
The bioburden being the blood, tissue, bone fragments, all that.
Yeah, exactly. There's a foundational rule in this field. You cannot sterilize dirt. If the organic soil isn't meticulously removed in the Deacon area using the right enzymes and water temperatures, the sterilization cycle will just fail.
Because the scheme or chemicals can't penetrate that barrier of soil.
Exactly. That's why it's a massive 21% of the test.
Okay, so then the instrument moves out of decontamination and into the prep area. This brings us to Section 3, preparation and packaging, which is also 21% of the exam.
Right.
But I have to push back a little here. I mean, I understand why cleaning is crucial and sterilization is the ultimate goal, obviously. But why is packaging, like literally just putting things in a wrap or a container, weighted just as heavily as the actual sterilization process?
Because sterility maintenance is just as critical as the sterilization itself. I mean, you could run a perfect steam cycle and kill every microbe on that instrument.
Right.
But if the surgical tray wasn't assembled correctly, or if the protective wrap has a microscopic tear because it wasn't folded properly, that tray is contaminated the second it leaves the sterilizer.
Oh, wow. I didn't think about it like that.
Yeah, when a scrub nurse opens that tray in the OR and finds a hole in the packaging, the surgery stops. The instrument is completely useless. The packaging is the only thing protecting the patient between the sterile processing department and the surgical incision.
That paints a very vivid picture. It's not just wrapping boxes, it's creating an impenetrable barrier.
Exactly.
And then, of course, we reach Section 4, the sterilization process itself, another 21%.
The killing blow to the microbes. This is where you really have to understand the intense parameters of steam, hydrogen peroxide, and ethylene oxide.
Knowing the precise temperatures, pressures, and exposure times required for total lethality.
Yeah, you need absolute total lethality.
So we have 21% for Deacon, 21% for packaging, and 21% for sterilization. If we do the math, those three sections alone make up 63% of the entire CRCST exam.
Nearly 2/3 of your score.
2/3. It's dictated by your mastery of the instrument's core life cycle. Like the source puts it, these are your bang for your buck study targets.
Absolutely. If you develop absolute mastery over these three sections, you build a massive foundation toward your passing score. But we do have to be very careful here.
Careful of what?
Well, recognizing this 63% concentration often leads to a pretty dangerous trap for candidates.
I can actually guess the trap, because it's exactly where my mind goes.
Let's hear it.
If I know that almost 2/3 of the exam is just sections 2, 3, and 4, the temptation is to basically just ignore the rest of the textbook. Like, can I just focus exclusively on cleaning, packaging, and sterilizing, master those chapters, and essentially game the test?
No, you absolutely cannot skip the other chapters. I know it's tempting, but no. The outline might categorize the exam into these 7 neat sections, but those sections pull their source material from across all 24 chapters of the manual.
Oh, so they aren't just isolated chapters.
Not at all. The manual doesn't just isolate sterilization into one neat little box. Concepts of microbiology, infection control, and quality assurance are woven throughout every single step of the process.
Got it. So the strategy isn't about ignoring chapters to save time.
No, it's really a strategy for allocating your mental energy. You need a broad, functional understanding of the entire manual to be a competent technician. But you need to develop extraordinary, granular depth in the chapters that feed sections 2, 3, and 4.
Okay, so you read everything, but when you're doing your intensive review, like taking practice exams and drilling down, that high-level effort belongs to the big 3.
Exactly. Broad understanding of the whole landscape, but hyper-focused excavation where the gold is actually buried.
That makes total sense. So since we can't ignore the rest of the blueprint, how do the remaining sections frame this massive 63% core? Like, what is the rest of the exam actually testing?
Well, let's look at the bookends of the outline. Section 1 is sort of the 30,000-foot view. It focuses on the big picture infrastructure of the sterile processing department.
Like what?
We're talking about environmental conditions, like specific air pressure requirements and temperature controls, along with department governance, federal regulations, strict rules for record keeping.
So it's not about how to scrub a specific pair of scissors, it's the ecosystem that allows that scrubbing to happen safely.
Right, exactly. The rules of the road, the regulatory framework. It contrasts that with Section 7, which sits at the very end of the outline. Section 7 shifts entirely away from mechanical processes and regulations.
What does it focus on?
Purely on human relations and professional development. It tests your understanding of communication, ethics, teamwork within a high-stress hospital environment.
Okay, so you have The overarching rules at the beginning, the human element at the end, and then this intense, hands-on mechanical processing making up the vast majority of the middle.
Exactly. And speaking of those hands-on sections, the source material points out a really fascinating structural pattern across sections 2 through 6.
Oh, right. They all begin the exact same way.
Yep. And this brings us right back to the reality of the job task analysis. Every single operational section begins with safety and work area preparation.
So before it asks you how to operate a machine, it asks if you know how to actually protect yourself.
Exactly. I mean, in the clinical environment of a hospital, you don't just walk up to a sink full of bloody instruments and start scrubbing. The setup is incredibly critical.
Because you're dealing with severe biological hazards, right?
Biological hazards, harsh enzymatic chemicals, extreme temperatures. The foundational step of every task is putting on the correct heads at night. Personal protective equipment.
The heavy aprons, the face shields, the specialized gloves.
Right. The exam outline is organized chronologically according to a technician's actual physical workflow. It demands that you prove you understand safety before it will ever ask you about sterilization.
That chronological structure really becomes apparent when you drill down into the subtopics, too. Like Section 4, the sterilization process, is a perfect example of how granular this map actually gets.
Oh, definitely. It doesn't just broadly list sterilizers as a topic.
No, it literally forces you to understand the intricate physics and testing of those machines. It specifically lists subtopics like quality testing methods. It names leak tests, dart tests, and biological indicators.
Which are crucial.
Let's pause there for a second, though, because those terms sound incredibly intimidating if you're just starting out. What are those tests actually doing in the real world, and why does the exam care so much about them?
Well, they are the ultimate proof of patient safety. A steam sterilizer works by forcing high-pressure, high-temperature steam into surgical packages to kill microorganisms.
Okay.
But if there's a pocket of cold air inside that sterilizer chamber, the steam can't penetrate it. The instruments inside that air pocket simply won't get sterilized.
So that's where the tests come in.
Right. So a DART test, which stands for Dynamic Air Removal Test, is run daily to prove that the machine's vacuum system is successfully sucking all the cold air out.
Okay.
And a leak test proves the chamber is completely airtight. And then a biological indicator is a vial containing actual, living, highly resistant bacterial spores.
Wait, they put living spores in the machine?
Yeah. You run those spores through the sterilizer, and then you incubate them. If nothing grows, you have absolute proof that your machine can kill the toughest bugs on the planet.
When you explain it like that, it's so obvious why these subtopics are heavily tested. You aren't just memorizing definitions, you're learning how to legally and scientifically prove that a surgical instrument won't cause a lethal infection.
Exactly.
And this brings us to a major tactical insight from the source material. Because the outline is so specific about these testing methods, you can use it to completely demystify the textbook.
Oh, 100%. The source notes that because the outline specifically dictates you must know about sterilizer monitoring devices, you can cross-reference that directly to Chapter 17 of the manual.
Which covers quality assurance and record keeping.
Right.
You look at the outline, you see biological indicators, you go to the index of the manual, and boom, it takes you straight to the exact pages detailing those devices.
It completely transforms your relationship with the manual.
You aren't just reading hundreds of pages sequentially, hoping the important stuff sticks in your brain. You are actively hunting for specific answers to specific concepts that the outline guarantees will be on the test.
The manual just becomes a searchable database. It changes you from a passive reader into an active investigator.
Letting the blueprint dictate your reading assignments rather than letting the textbook overwhelm you. So let's translate this theory into a concrete plan of action. Let's say you are sitting down at your desk tonight. You have a 2-hour block to study.
Okay.
The 9th edition manual is on your left, and the printed content outline is on your right. What is the tactical, step-by-step method for using these two documents together?
Well, the first step is the simplest, but candidates rarely do it. Read the entire content outline before you ever open the textbook.
Really? Before even cracking the book?
Yeah, let the structure of the exam set the mental framework for your study session. You need to know what the house looks like before you start cutting the lumber.
Establish the parameters of what actually matters.
Exactly. Step 2 is to use the outline as a literal physical filter alongside the manual.
How so?
As you read a chapter, constantly cross-reference it with your printed outline. Ask yourself, which specific bullet point on this outline is this paragraph addressing?
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so if you're reading a highly detailed historical account of how surgical clamps were manufactured in the 1950s, and you can't connect that information to any operational bullet point on your outline, you are likely dwelling on low-impact material.
You can just acknowledge it and move on.
Right, saving your intense focus for the critical processes.
That is a phenomenal filter. It gives you permission to skim the background information and drill deep into the operational facts. But what about when it comes to testing yourself? Like, how does the outline integrate with practice exams?
That is step 3, and it's really where this strategy accelerates your learning. When you take practice questions, and you should be taking hundreds of them, you have to change how you review your incorrect answers.
Give me an example of how that works in real time.
Let's say you take a 50-question practice test, and you miss a question about the proper temperature parameters for a low-temperature hydrogen peroxide sterilizer.
Okay.
Don't just look at the correct answer, say, oh, okay, and move to the next question. Take that missed question and map it back to your outline.
So you figure out where it fits.
Right. You realize, okay, that question falls under Section 4, the sterilization process. You are now tracking your specific weak spots within the blueprint.
You know exactly which section of the manual you need to revisit.
Exactly. It turns your practice tests from a simple grading tool into a highly accurate diagnostic machine for your own brain.
You're diagnosing your own knowledge gaps based on the exam's exact priorities. I love that. There is one more crucial tactic we need to discuss, though, and it circles back to the percentages we talked about earlier.
Time allocation.
Yes.
Time management is where most candidates accidentally sabotage themselves.
Yeah.
You absolutely must prioritize your study hours based on the weighted percentages of the outline.
Let's contrast Section 4, the sterilization process, against Section 6, which covers patient care equipment and distribution.
Okay.
Section 4 is a massive 21% of the exam. According to the outline, Section 6 is only 5%.
Exactly. Now, Section 6 covers important hospital tasks like managing IV pumps and tracking mobile equipment. But it is a fraction of the exam compared to sterilization.
So if you have 4 hours to study this week,
and you spend 2 hours memorizing the intricacies of IV pump distribution and only 2 hours reviewing steam sterilization cycles, you are making a massive strategic error.
you're giving equal study time to wildly unequal topics.
Exact.
To put it as bluntly as possible, spend extra time where the exam spends extra time.
Yes.
If a topic represents a fifth of the exam, it should command a fifth of your study schedule. If a topic is only 5%, you absolutely need to review it and understand the workflows, obviously.
Sure.
But you should not be agonizing over the fine details of it at midnight before your test.
Dedicating peak mental energy to low-weighted chapters in the final weeks of prep is a classic recipe for burnout. More importantly, it just crowds out the high-value, life-saving information that the exam actually prioritizes.
Because your time is a finite resource, spend it where the return on investment is highest.
Always.
Let's bring all of this together. If you've been sitting there feeling entirely overwhelmed, stuck, or just generally panicked by the sheer physical size of that HSPA manual,
The problem is not your intelligence.
no. The problem isn't your capacity to memorize. The problem was simply that you were trying to navigate a massive, complex city without a map.
You were trying to build a highly technical infrastructure without the architect's blueprint.
But now you have the map. You understand that the exam is a direct reflection of the physical, high-stakes reality of the sterile processing department.
You know that the journey of the instrument, cleaning, packaging, and sterilization makes up the big three.
Those three operational realities account for 63% of your score. You know that while the exam requires a broad understanding of the entire manual, it demands absolute, uncompromising expertise in those core areas.
And most importantly, you now know how to use the outline as an active filter to track your diagnostic progress and manage your limited study time.
When the mystery of the exam disappears, the stress disappears with it.
It really shifts your mindset from passing a generic test to proving you are ready to protect patients. And, if we look even further down the road, there's a lingering thought here about the nature of the job task analysis itself.
What do you mean?
Well, we discussed how this exam's weighting perfectly mirrors the daily reality of sterile processing right now in this exact moment in medical history.
It's a snapshot of the current hospital ecosystem.
Right. But modern medicine is never static. The technology utilized in hospital basements is advancing at an incredible rate.
Oh, absolutely.
We're already seeing significant leaps with artificial intelligence data logging and automated robotics slowly entering the decontamination and sterilization spaces.
That's wild to think about.
So the question becomes, how will the physical, daily realities of a sterile processing technician fundamentally change in the next 5 to 10 years? And when the HSPA conducts their next major job task analysis, what completely new technological skill might suddenly emerge to become the fourth heavyweight section on this exam?
That is a fascinating reality to consider. Will troubleshooting robotic decontamination arms become a 20% section?
Or managing AI-driven tracking software, will that overtake the traditional infrastructure section?
The job will inevitably evolve, and the blueprint will be forced to evolve right alongside it to protect the patient.
Exactly.
But for now, the blueprint you have in your hands today is the exact key you need to pass. Next time you sit down at that desk and the 9th edition manual is staring up at you, remember, it is no longer an intimidating wall of text.
It is just a searchable database waiting for you to apply your map.
Use the blueprint, trust the strategy, and go crush your exam prep. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.